Good afternoon on this Sunday, September 11th, as we remember the victims and heroes of exactly 10 years ago. This is your 28storms.com tropical weather update. As expected, Nate made landfall as a tropical storm and quickly dissipated as it came on shore. We'll take a quick look at the satellite in just a moment. And of course, we also have Tropical Storm Maria located just to the north of Puerto Rico, and elsewhere the tropics are relatively quiet this afternoon. As we can see on the latest visible imagery, the center of Tropical Storm Nate has made landfall within just the last 6 hours, but on the infrared there's really nothing left to the system, so there are no flood concerns, and that is mainly due to the large presence of dry air that is still present over much of the country, and we saw that working its way into the center for the better part of the last 3 to 4 days, so the system never really had a chance to really get its act together. Turning to Tropical Storm Maria, maximum sustained winds have increased to 60 miles per hour. It's moving off toward the west-northwest at 10 miles per hour, and it's still forecast to pass just to the west of Bermuda. However, that track has trended a little bit closer to the island, and the Hurricane Center has once again increased the intensity forecast, and they do expect it to pass near the island as a hurricane. And there is still time for that track to shift a little bit more toward the east. You are still within the margin of error, and the model consensus is in fairly good agreement with the official forecast track, but notice that some of the models still take this a little bit closer to the island, so interest there should at least be bracing for some gusty wind conditions, possibly in excess of tropical storm force, and we'll just have to keep an eye on whether or not these models begin to shift a little bit closer. The center is still partially exposed to the east-northeast of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and that is due to the presence of continued southwesterly wind shear, and therefore the strongest convection and winds are located to the northeast of the center. So the islands are doing pretty well this afternoon. You're still getting some isolated shower and storm activity down toward the south, but by far the strongest winds are going to remain off the coast, which is certainly some good news. The enhanced infrared continues to make Tropical Storm Maria look a little bit more impressive than it really is. We see some really strong cloud tops, or at least cold cloud tops, but until they become centered directly over the storm, then it's really not going to make much of a difference in terms of the actual intensity. We can see the reason why the wind shear is still unrelenting, and that is because we still have this mid to upper level low located to the north of the storm, but it does look like that upper level low is gradually weakening with time. So we still expect that Tropical Storm Maria will begin to intensify a little bit more as it begins to make a turn more toward the north, out ahead of this trough over the southeast United States. So the Hurricane Center expectation of this becoming a minimal hurricane still looks legitimate. And if we take a quick look at the 12Z ECMWF model forecast, we can see the position of Tropical Storm Maria at the current hour, and then as we go into 24 and 48 hours, notice that we still have a lot of troughing near the Outer Banks of North Carolina. The western periphery of the Atlantic subtropical ridge extends a little bit past 65 west, so the storm is going to begin making the turn between 65 and 70. And as we go into day 3 and day 4, the storm narrowly misses Bermuda to the west, but once again we still can't rule out at least some strong winds and heavy rainfall. And by 120 hours, the storm is now beginning to pass into the Canadian Maritimes, so we can't rule out some impacts there. But elsewhere, the rest of the tropics appear to be fairly quiet by day 5, so we may get a bit of a break after Tropical Cyclone Maria begins to pass out to sea. And into day 6, there's still really not a whole lot on the map. And by day 7, we see that much of the U.S. eastern seaboard is being dominated by high pressure. Oftentimes when that occurs, you may have to start looking more into the central and western Caribbean, but luckily the European is not really showing much in the way of any development. If anything, if we go into days 8 through 10, notice that we do have a broad 1010 millibar surface low trying to get its act together over the far northwest Caribbean and southern Gulf of Mexico, but certainly nothing to be alarmed about at this point. So that is your tropical weather update for this Sunday. Please stop by again tomorrow afternoon for another video update.